Awesome. Thank you guys so much. First and foremost, thank you to Dr. Marlena. Marlena, it was so wonderful speaking with you. And she gave me a great topic tonight on saving lives, limbs, and your identity. And so many times, I think we've already talked about social media. And so it's the other things that we don't talk about being online and trying to protect ourselves when we think we're being really smart. So that's what we're going to discuss tonight. Some of the things about your identity, what your actual digital card looks like, what are the security things that are out there, and what the future looks like for this. So let's get started tonight. Shout out to my previous resident, Selena Poon. You've done a great job, and I really look forward to seeing you guys in the next academy. I mean, I hate that we're not doing this live. So it goes to prove virtual. Virtual is very important, as you can tell. Physical identity, as we know it, is sort of out the window. We are dealing with three different generations now. We're dealing with the baby boomers. We're dealing with Gen X, that's me, and a millennial crowd that are new residents that are out there in practice now. And so with that, the virtual versus physical, a lot of us forget that, we think we're sort of immune to it or we don't have time. So the question is I have for you guys tonight is, have you Googled yourself? I want you guys to become your own stalker. And so it seems comical, it's like, but when was the last time you Googled yourself? And not just your immediate name, but your, married name, perhaps it's a divorce name. Maybe there's another business that you run. You want to Google anything and everything that has your identity to it, because the physical identity on paper is one thing. Digital identity is a whole new ball game that we are not educated and are privy to. And so my disclaimer is the rules of medicine. I call it rule number 24. It is basically business. And this is business. You better know your own self. So become your own stalker, what's out there. And reason being, search engine optimization, something that puts people at higher rankings, will basically decide what is at the forefront of your Google. And so with that, you don't control that. You are not bigger than Google, I promise you. And so therefore, if Google can put things like health grades and vitals and these other companies that are out there, they're paying big money to have their name out front and advertise, those are the things that are going to come up first. And your name is in there as a digital identity that we'll even discuss in a little bit how it got there, and you have no control over it. Social media, that's what we're talking about tonight. It's already been discussed a lot. The question is, with 3.5 million people on social media every day and at 3 hours a piece, and most of us at doing 8 different types of social media, the question is, what are you on? What are you connecting yourself to? Myself, I'm on so many apps, I literally have lost count. Some of the major ones you want to be on are definitely Facebook because of the way that they actually advertise. Your business account versus a personal account. You want to be on Instagram, Twitter, more conversational. You want to be on LinkedIn, Doximity. Some of the other things that are now coming up are these other things that you see in front of you that are really important. But like for me, I'm a mom of 3. And so PMG on Facebook is a chat group that I love being, Physician Mom Group, because it's a place where we can let our hair down, no pun intended, and get real, but at the same time, get information. You are still vulnerable because you don't own that information. So again, your digital identity is exposed if you are connecting through all these platforms. And every time you connect, and I can bet money on it, you guys all have the same login. And so one of the things we'll talk about soon also are some of the things we control. The other thing that with our digital identity that really has put us very, very vulnerable is databases. And so when the internet really started, 86, 87, and then the ICANN basically is sort of the governing body that controlled the data that went in, they siloed a lot of information. So medical professionals went into one, doctors, residents, nurses, whoever. And these silos or this funneled information was not controlled by the doctors. And so with these databases, what happens is it's not corrected, or if it is corrected, it takes time. There's still a digital footprint that somebody can pull up old data on you. And so therefore you don't control that. You can't change it. And if you do, it takes a lot. One of our main things right now is learning how to opt out of some of these databases. You can go in and strategically try to get out of some of their databases. However, they can always go back in and advertise and do it again. What this discovery for opting out, removing some of this negative reputation, you didn't ask for this, but you got it. How do you remove some of that content? And we'll talk about some of that. I think we've already discussed some of it as well. But the issue is it takes a lot. And because we don't control our own identity, we don't go and check our identity, how can we know and or try to protect our identity? And so a lot of this is really looking, seeing what's out there, what's being said about you. Next, we'll talk about more the privacy and cookies. So privacy policies, as you guys saw, really does stink. A lot of people don't understand privacy policies. It's basically information about what they're going to collect when you come onto their website. Cookies are basically smaller bits of information about you specifically searching on their website, what they're going to continue to maintain while you're on their website, and then when your computer comes back. So you can either do things to protect your identity, not log in, or come in under a pseudonym, and or log in as a dark login. You see these things called incognito on Google now. These are things that will not allow the cookies to be monitored, or you go in and you delete cookies every night or whenever you're on your website. And it's not just the initial software that you're looking at. You actually have to do some backdoor searching. So you do have to be a little bit tech savvy to do all that. And I would definitely advise you to possibly clear that every now and then, as well as Google yourself at least twice a year, maybe more. Next, your business card. All of us have business cards. We carry business cards because it's a form of networking, if you will. And so is being online now. Your new business card has become your website. So there's basically your personal website and your business, your professional website. Those websites are providing general information about who you are, about yourself, the services you provide, and products. And the reason I say this is because a lot of us do a lot of things, but we overlap, and we've got to be more careful about that. Your professional identity is not your personal identity. A lot of times your domain name, your host, how you log in, the companies you're using, that kind of stuff, you're using the same identity, the same digital footprint, as well as the login passwords on your personal accounts as you are your professional accounts. Stop, because this is how your identity gets stolen and or hacked and or whatever that's going to harm you in the future. A lot of us are more than just medicine. We are entrepreneurs, myself included. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have multiple businesses. I can't afford my professional business as a surgeon to go down and be tampered with, because it's going to eventually somehow affect my other businesses, my nonprofits. We're moms. People are watching us on a professional level as well as a personal level. My social media is actually open to anybody and everyone that's out there, because we have a large church in North Houston, here in Texas. My members want to know who we are, what we're doing. We did a live stream with our kids last night to over 10,000 people. And so therefore, my life really isn't my own. So therefore, I do have to be careful what I put out there. But at the same time, people want to know that side. So I mix and mingle both on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. But then I have other businesses, again, nonprofits, private interests that I don't want anybody else to know about. I call it the NODB. It's none of their damn business. So what you do, if the identity is out there and you're sharing it and you're not being protective of your check-in, your logins, and going back into monitoring it, I promise you it's going to be breached. Case in point, I have a nonprofit called Motivated and Empowering Women. In October, we have a secondary authentication code, which we'll talk about as well. The secondary authentication code means that as soon as someone logs in and tries to get into that account, they will text me or email me and my secretary or my assistant. And so she calls me and she can't get me, but she realizes someone's trying to hack our account from like the Philippines. Locked down the account, but within less than 30 minutes, they had taken everything off that website, had put up some horrible things, as well as had our bank information and some other stuff. And it was all because I had not utilized some of the protective things on GoDaddy. That going through some of the websites, you can actually protect yourself, specifically software that they have, the links that they have. There's other things that they can make sure, like the secondary authentication that will protect you and warn you when people are trying to get in. It cost us $750 on a Sunday afternoon to basically go back and retrieve our account and protect it for the next 2 years. Was it worth it? Yes. But was it an expensive lesson? You better believe it. So don't be that lesson. The other side is your website, that is your professional website. Let me be very clear. They own you. I don't care if you are in private practice, if you are in a collaboration with some hospital, if you have a contract as somewhat of a hospitalist or a group or whatever else, you do not own yourself. One, because your identity is already out there on the web, but also because there's things like intellectual property, the image and likeness. If you are working with a large hospital and you are somehow getting financial benefits from them, they own your image and likeness. So that means they can put any picture out, they can put any verbiage out that they want of your image and likeness, and you don't control that. So make sure those are some of the things that you learn in contracts that you want to make sure that you control. What can you say? And I think we talked about this earlier too. What you can't say, and the things that you want to really make sure of is like, where can you go to do presentations? Or is it okay for you to come to the Ruth Jackson Orthopedic Society to do a presentation? If they own you, hopefully so, but you never know if there's someplace else you want to go to present and they say no. And you have no rights at this point because they basically own you. Also, you want to know what that non-disclosure is. That non-disclosure is how long, or do not compete, I should say. The non-disclosure is what they can say about you, what you can say about them. Can you use their logo, their branding as well? Just because you work for a company doesn't mean that you can utilize that on your personal side. So there's a lot of other things that go along with your identity that you may or may not control. All right. Next, let's talk about social media. So if you're not already on social media, we talked about this. The average American is in 8 different social media platforms. The big ones, Facebook, because it can reach so many and they are more open with their privacy now. Instagram is huge for a millennial crowd. TikTok is, like she said, up and coming. Twitter is probably more of the Gen X and some baby boomers, as your president has proven it to be very popular. LinkedIn is popular for medical professionals, and then YouTube is definitely for content sharing and showing yourself to be the authority in whatever field you're in. Next, we'll talk about security. So this is a key slide to take home. How do you protect yourself in this digital identity, digital theft type of environment? Now, you want to be wary of going to places with free Wi-Fi. My daughters, we were recently in Mexico and coming back, started getting some really crazy, people saying their account had been hacked and whatnot. And it was because we used the Wi-Fi at the airport, and so you have to be very careful who can get in if it's not a VPN, a protected network, that kind of thing. We want to make sure that if you trust it, or if not, use the incognito type of things when you're searching. Use strong, unique passwords online accounts. I don't care if you change it by 1 letter. So it's, whatever for Instagram and it's IG, and it's whatever for Facebook and it's FB, and it's whatever, and you put your, anniversary of your mother and father at the beginning date or whatever. Just change each account so each one is different, because if they can hack one, they can hack all of them. Have different types of accounts. Again, for me, being transparent across multiple platforms, I have to have one identity, because it's branding for my book, for my church, that kind of thing, as well as an orthopedic surgeon. Hashtag I am orthodoc on all platforms. And that is one thing that people don't do, because I'm not going to show you inappropriate swimsuit pictures of myself, if that's not who I want, if that's not what I want you to see. However, if I show you the beach and we're hanging out and you see my blue toenail polish, I don't mind if my church people see that, if ortho people see that, or regular people in the world see that. So again, what I would present professionally and or not goes a long way, because if not, then hide that account. No one needs to have that identity of who you are on that account. Don't let it be your name, some crazy name or character or whatever else that you want it to be, but let it be different. Use security tools that are installed on websites. A lot of times, if you're doing your own personal websites, they are already there. The SSLs, the authentication, Norton, those kind of things that are already validated and you can trust on websites like a GoDaddy, like a building sites, like oh my God, there's thousands of them out there, but use their tools. You're going to pay a little bit more, but it will protect you in the long run. Again, use the two-factor authentication. Either it's going to be through your phone number, they're going to email you. Recently, I just had one with Barclays. They actually call you before you can actually log in. And then the other thing that's now is the generated QR code or serial of like 9 numbers to authenticate that it's you. And so like Facebook and Microsoft and even Google are now coming out with this code generator. So it's a separate app, but you go into that app as soon as you click to say, authenticated as me, it generates a code and it's only good for a couple of minutes. And so it's another way that people cannot hack your accounts. Then don't forget to terminate old accounts. I had names as when I was single or in medical school or different times or different organizations or whatever else, and those accounts are still open and anybody can use that as identification. So make sure you want to go in and close those old accounts. And then don't fall prey to clickbait. I'm working with a government facility right now, and every 3 months they allow you have to go in and do this updated security on how not to click on, fake bait of, oh, your identity has been stolen, click here to reclaim, or this is a great ad, or, whatever. Make sure, scroll down to the bottom or look at who sent the email. Does it have a valid looking account? And when in doubt, don't, okay? Because it can be a lot of malware onto your software. And then the other thing that is out there is called protect your social media privacy. You actually do have social media privacy. You can go in and unclick all the advertisement that they want to link to you by being linked to that account. Facebook has multiple screens that you have to do to get to it, but it can be done. And Instagram has it as well, which is owned by Facebook. And Twitter's is a little bit more easy to go in and let them not follow your social media. So therefore you don't get the advertisement, all right? But also they don't follow what you're doing and what you're looking at, so they can send those advertisements to you directly. Again, those are cookies. And then limit your sharing on social media. I am a concealed handgun license carrier in Texas for multiple reasons. However, one of the guys that was actually teaching us was a Marine, and he basically says, every time you guys post something, it lets people know exactly where you are. So I think you said earlier, make sure that you post it later, or you change the, maybe it's a right hand or a left hand or whatever else. Same thing. We didn't post while we were in Mexico. We waited till we were back in town, because if we start posting and people saw it, then it was like, oh, they're actually out of town, so someone can rob your house, or that kind of stuff. Don't put things that are really sensitive to your front of your house, and it's a picture but it has your street address, stuff. People are stalkers, and they will find stuff out and they will use it for good or bad. And usually I say there's not so much good in the world when it comes to identity theft. Okay, some other things to fix it. So how do these people actually utilize your information, your data that has been siloed from the beginning? Every time you went from medical school and you put in on the application, and your social security number and your phone number and your email, every time you put that stuff in, it's siloed into information on the website. And this goes under, health grades, vitals, all of these different accounts where they can evaluate you as a physician or a person and say some really derogatory things. It's under the Communication Decency Act. And this basically says we are not responsible for screening, policing, or editing or monitoring this site. So they basically have no responsibility to what people say. And this is how they can keep this stuff. This is how you can try to go in for months, if not years, to get things removed that may be derogatory and untrue and cannot. So what can you do? One, you have to usually go in and actually contact them directly. And that is usually a form, and good luck with that, because it took a friend of mine 6 months just to get them to respond to the form. She sent multiple times. The other thing is to have positive review generation. And this is where you actually ask your patients to go in and do more positive reviews. Patients that you have good rapport with, patients that like you and that don't mind vouching for you and that will prove to be an actual person and a valid account. that will actually increase those numbers on the search engine optimization. Therefore, they'll be more visible. And then you do something called search engine suppression, which basically pushes all the bad things to the bottom. Page 3, page 4 of Google, where most people don't go. Page 1 is where you want the best things that can be said about you and anything to do with your identity. And then worst case scenario, if it comes to the point where you think there has been, they have defamed your name, you probably want to pursue litigation. And again, that comes at a cost, time, energy, and money. So again, protecting your identity, knowing what people are saying, you have to screen it. So this is sort of summary picture that basically social media limits your screen, your sharing, two-step authentication, terminate old accounts, change passwords often is another good one. And then passwords strong, make sure you have different accounts for your professional and personal. Use the website tools, and then be careful where you're using Wi-Fi and that kind of thing. So some of the extra things I wanted to share that you guys may or may not have known about are the extra things that are out there for cybersecurity. So a lot of us have heard of LifeLock. And we were traveling in Israel, and I got a notification that my social security number had been used to open an account in South Dakota. So LifeLock helped protect me, but by calling one phone call, they just so happened that the EIN number of my business account was the same as someone else's social security number. It just happened to be a coincidence, but it was an alert that I was quickly able to call and shut it down, or at least know that it wasn't, valid. Some of the other companies that you see here, Identity Guard, are not just for your credit or your ranking. They also protect things like your identity if it's stolen, and defamation as well. Very costly. Things like Xander insurance, if you actually lose time, cost of litigation, that kind of stuff. These are other ways and companies that can do this for you. But again, costs a lot of money. So if you can prevent it and monitor it, then that's the best way to go, instead of having to worry about fixing it later on. Okay. So this is a big one. So I call it What in the Web, and it's a busy slide, but what I want you to see is over to the right here is basically what you know as the web is called the surface web. That is the Google, that is where Yahoo is, and CNN, and all the things that we probably look at daily. What we don't know about a lot is called the deep web. The deep web is where the academic data, that's where most of our information is as medical doctors. That's where your medical records are for your patients and yourself. That's where all your financial records, everything from a mortgaged home to credit cards to anything at debt that you may have, legal documents from houses to divorces and marriages, scientific reports. This is where a lot of the research is stored. And then any type of government, anything. These are the areas where they keep it, the deep web. You can't just go looking for this thing and get into it. You have to have a little bit more expertise, or there's a little bit more screening, or a lot more safety or locks to get to these things. Now, the worst thing is called the dark web. And a lot of you guys have probably heard, oh my God, the dark web and what is it and whatever else. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's where the bad stuff is. It's where the bad people are. It's where the things that we can't not even imagine on our worst day, what is going on there. But what I want you to understand is we as orthopedic surgeons and physicians, the dark web services, we are very vulnerable to at least 6 of the channels of what they do. Pharmaceuticals, because they will sell and use drugs and use different means to get those. And sometimes that may be your DEA number and you don't even know it. Financial and fraud sites, they will use your name or credentials, maybe from medical school. It may be from a house that you bought 20 years ago and you forgot about the credentials. Drugs, again, goes back to some of the pharmaceuticals. Sometimes this is not so much legal drugs, it's illegal drugs, but using fake documents and services, from passports to licenses to whatever else, medical documents, medical records, that kind of stuff. And then that gets people everything from cards that they can use and get in other places. So there literally can be another you, 2 or 3 of you in various areas of the world. And on the dark web, you would never know it. So how do you protect yourself from that? Again, talk to you guys about some of the things that would actually monitor that, and some of those things not LifeLock, but some of the other ones are specifically to dark web and deep web. And if you are just starting out in medical practice, in orthopedics or in medicine, it may not be right now, but if you're like myself, 10, 20 years in, it's definitely probably worth at least having a once-time scan at some point, just to make sure what is out there about you on the dark web. All right. So final point, let's talk about the future of your identity. And this is a little bit more complex, so stick with me. I'm almost done. Sovereignty on the internet is about your identity and you controlling it. Remember, I talked about the fact that you didn't own your identity anymore. So in the future, I believe in a bell curve. And we've all heard about this whole flattening the curve right now with the coronavirus. Flattening the curve basically means everything has a period where things adjust and then they get better and they sort of level out, right? So I think the web is the same way. We started really strong in the first 30 years or so. All this information. We are information overload and everybody knows everything, every time, all about you. There's nothing to hide. And I think it's going to slowly but surely over the next 10 to 20 years circle back where you now are going to be more in control of your identity and the information that's out there. And this is called self-sovereignty, the identity. And what it is, and the best way I can explain this, is if you guys have heard of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a technology. It's a technology that is being utilized on the internet. The technology basically is to take away the siloed information about you. So everything that you've ever done, from every license you've applied for every credit card to, every paper or anything that has a link to you with your name, social security number, date of birth, emails, or anything else, becomes decentralized. Not one party or person or entity can control that. Currently, the internet is basically based off of a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is controlled by higher powers that we could never compete with and or have the money to compete with. Using Bitcoin type of technology called blockchain, the idea is to do something called decentralization. So no longer in a siloed entity, it becomes multiple entities. And those entities are then placed in a encrypted database. The encryption basically comes all of the information about you, my social security number, my ID, my licenses, become encrypted where, randomly algorithm, no one can read. And each one of these pieces of information gets stored in different places. And the only person that has a key to that would be you. So this is called decentralization, autonomization, organizations. And so there's several of them already out there. This is already happening. And medicine right now is eventually going to get there, but it can be monetized. So I think it's definitely going to get there. So the idea again is that you have this certificate here that you own and no longer these entities, but it becomes you yourself, and you can actually sell those if they want the information. So if Health Grades, who is selling advertisement on their website because they have the free information that's out there about you, and you have no right to say you should not use my name or my medical record number or anything else, medical license number on your website, you don't have that control. But with blockchain technology and this decentralization information, you now control it. And so if Health Grades wants to use your name, they're going to have to pay you to use their name. And so some people say, oh, but then you're hiding something, or we don't want to do that because then patients won't find you. No, trust me, because the idea would be each governing body now becomes, in the United States, in China, in Australia, all these different places, we all agree to a mutual community of medical professionals or doctors per se. And we decide this smart contract is what they call it, which is saying the values we will accept under this blockchain. What values go in, which is our data of who we are, our medical licenses, any information from test scores to whatever is locked down by us. And therefore, if they want to deal with that, then they come to the DAO of doctors, and then it has to be released. But we all agree on what that is. So if you want to think about it as a very smart union. which is what we've been saying doctors should do for a long time to get some power back, right? So this is the future. This is where we're going. And it's a hard concept to grasp, but the idea that the decentralization autonomous organization already exists is called Doctors of DAO. This is one, and there's another one called HPEC, Health Professionals Empowered Organization or Community, and there's others that will evolve. Nonetheless, they're all going to reside on the same type of platform and all have the same power. There is no hierarchy anymore.